Welcome to Two Lean Guys podcast. I'm Uncle D, and as always with me is Johnny Hustle. Morning, Johnny. How you doing?
Morning. I'm doing great. How about yourself, man?
Living the COVID dream or nightmare as it may be. It seems like it's really at that peak right now, frenzy for most people.
Yeah, it really is, and it's so universal. We're seeing it East Coast, West Coast, mid country, and everybody seems to be affected by it in the worst possible way.
Yeah, I mean, globally, there's demonstrations. So I think it's important that we take a minute and just recognize how much this is impacting people and business. And I think you and I did a couple rants this week that we're talking about, I was talking about the human condition and you were talking about empathetic listening. And I just wanted to see if maybe we could explore those two things a little bit, because you can't really get across in a minute everything that I think I meant, at least with what I was talking about. And I know you have more perspective to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great time to spend or a great way to spend our time right now. There's so much happening, and there are people at different ends of the spectrum. Those whose businesses have ramped up tremendously because they're in a critical, emergent kind of field, and others whose business has dropped off tremendously, and they've got decisions to make too on what to do. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of people affected, and the stress levels in both directions are tremendous.
Yeah, that's what I see, and that was mostly what I meant. I got I got some feedback about my post regarding, now's not the time for continuous improvement. That's not really what I meant. I think what I meant was now's not the time to push people.
Right.
There is a lot of high demand people that are laser focused on doing what they need to do to hit the new demands, whether
Sure.
that be in medical or other industry that they're in. What about those people that whose demand has dropped off? They're the ones that are struggling. And a lot of times people will say, when things are slow, it's good for continuous improvement.
Yeah, that is true. And typically we would be the biggest cheerleaders for that, to really take that time to apply a lot of the things that they can't seem to get done during their normal firefights. However, this is a different time. There's a lot of external pressures on people, and there's a lot of stress in their own internal lives. And I think if we're cognizant of our people's condition, then we can make a judgment call on whether or not it's the right time to really be pushing the process improvement, or if it's time to just, my rant was about, doing some empathetic listening and making sure that our people are whole first before we really task them to go above and beyond.
Yeah, and I have some clients who are so hard charging because they're so energized by this that there's no slowing them down, right? So the innovation clients that we have right now are responding to this demand and stepping up to the challenge and the crisis in the way that a lobster grows, right? And then these other ones that are struggling with the people that might not really see this as an opportunity. The empathetic listening is a big deal. I teach reflective listening as well, same kind of thing. Why is it important to go after or not go after? Why is it important to practice that now? I mean, it is usually the guidance, a lot of leaders want to lead in the sense that they want to give confidence and they want to give direction and they want to give, the next steps. This is what we're going to do. We're going to take the next hill. I think this topic of reflective or empathetic listening is really overlooked in continuous improvement.
Well, it really is, because if you think about who are the kinds of people typically that are looking at continuous improvement, Usually it's people who are very, very good at applying different kinds of innovation and very good with a technical background. Maybe they're not as touchy-feely. And I know I'm one of those folks, right? I am not the most touchy-feely of people. And you can talk to me all day long about your feelings and it virtually just bounces off me. However, as a leader, you can't come across as though you do not care about people's feelings. You know, you really do have to understand what's happening in other people's worlds, really get a good idea of whether or not they're capable at that point in time to take on additional responsibility, to apply themselves without huge distraction. If we're doing this kind of work and our entire team is totally distracted, we're not getting the output that we really need. And it may be time to say, you know, let's let this distraction out first. Let's talk to these people about the distractions. Let them know that one, we're here, we care. That when we say we want to charge up this hill, they say, geez, you know, we're going to charge up this hill with you because we know that you care about us as much as you do about production. And you know, that's a very, very important quality to have in order to achieve the goals that we need to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people, the stress that they feel right now is because they don't feel heard and they don't feel respected.
Well, that's exactly right. Now, you must see that with a lot of your clients out there. Not only are you dealing with the fact that you know, COVID's hitting everybody, but you have some language barriers out there. You have some even you know, different prejudices out there that you have to face that I don't necessarily have to where I am. It seems to me that it must be much harder for what you're facing than it is for what I'm facing.
LA is a melting pot, and you have to accept that if you want to live here, this is you really you should be embracing that. Majority of the population that my manufacturers have in their plants, well, it's a mixture. It just really depends on where they're at. So we've got a huge Hispanic population, a huge Asian population. We've got a large group of ethnicities in every neighborhood, pretty much.
Sure.
So in LA, I think the thing here is most everybody is highly respectful of race, I believe. And I think the thing for us is that it's hard to build a sense of community because it's so big.
Sure.
So I try to teach my trainers to build a sense of community at that place so that they feel like it's a lifestyle. You know, they may not feel respected on the street or in their neighborhood. They may have different issues, but when they come to work, it should be a safe place.
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest part of what I'm talking about with the empathetic listening too, is they have to feel as though they're in a place where it is safe and they can be very good active participants in this community.
You know, when we've done this and done it the right way, with leaders doing it the right way, we see like populations that are usually very submissive and passive stepping up in a big way. So young Hispanic women are the most dominant right force as soon as you let them go, but they need permission sometimes. It's really interesting because culturally, if we take the boundaries off of them and we take limits off of people and we just plant encouragement with them, you can see that they have so much capability that to me is really what training is about, is creating a safe place for people where they feel respected and then allowing them to explore things. And I learn more from people's explorations than I ever did from giving them specific instructions. You should do this X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, absolutely. Unleashing and unharnessing, well, unleashing and then harnessing, I guess, those capabilities is really amazing. Um,
Remember that old book, The Lightning Speed of Empowerment?
yeah.
I wonder if that thing is still in print. That book was really good. You know, I got that given to me on my first transformation in New Hampshire that you put me on. But one of the other trainers gave me that book, and it really helped me early in my career try to figure out what I was trying to do. Was I trying to organize the plant? Was I fixing the schedule? Was I, I'm empowering people? And
Right.
yeah, so that was really the very beginning of my lean journey, as an implementer. That was my first transformation where I was left alone. So I wonder today if leaders can see past their own emotion to be able to be sophisticated enough to listen to people in a way that doesn't make them feel like you're even trying to fix things. Lean guys, we're trying to fix stuff all the time.
Yeah. Right.
By our nature. But in this particular case, I think just being able to listen to someone and say, you know what, yeah, this sucks. This whole thing blows. And really the only thing we can do about it is kind of support each other and listen to each other and then kind of move on. So I don't want to make it sound like everything is just about a big group hug right now, because those companies that do have a high demand or an increased demand or a change demand, how do they motivate people without pushing them over the edge?
Well, let's look. So now that we're talking about the other end of the spectrum, right? And so that other end of the spectrum, if you think about it, Dennis, we've seen time and time again that some of the best innovations have come out during times of crisis, when companies didn't have a choice but needed to change, whether it was change into a new business model, change into a new product line. The necessity of that change really drove incredible innovation, and it really forced people inside organizations to show their true innovative spirit and shine. The shrinking violets didn't shine, but the ones that were wallflowers at one point in time, but now had the ability to be heard and to really speak up and say, hey, listen, I think there are things that we can do to not only make this product better and faster and run at rates that we need to run at, but also make it more desirable by the customer. Holy smokes, when those people started to really bring those ideas out, that's when we saw some innovations that just blew everybody's minds,
Yeah, and it's tough because innovation, you can't command it.
No.
Right? It's got to come out of people based on their situation, their condition. I think giving people a thought record so that they can write down, I'm old school, or keep a note in their phone about ideas that they have when they're not at work.
Sure.
They can bring back, a lot of times if you're mowing the lawn or taking a walk with a dog or whatever, you can think of things a little more freely because you're relaxed.
Right. And I can recall times where someone would come to me on the floor, pull out their phone and show me a picture of something completely unrelated and say, can't we do something like this?
Right.
Say, yeah, then there you go, those two, right? And you say, well, we can explore it. Let's dig in a little deeper and tell me more about what it is that you saw in that made you think that this was the solution to our problem. And more times than not, it's at least part of the solution.
All right, so let's dig a little deeper into those people who have new demand, high demand, need to innovate and create new demand.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that need to mobilize their forces as a fighter, as a part of fight for survival. All right, so we know that if someone's on the edge, don't push them. Right?
Sure.
But let's talk about the reality here is that to be able to rebound the best out of this, you've got to grow in some way, right? You've got to diversify in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So continuous improvement or Kaizen, to me, those kind of effectiveness and efficiency programs only are done to create innovation programs, right? To generate growth and diversify the business. So if you do have one of these situations where you have to handle this new demand, but people are on the edge, what are some very basic blocking and tackling things that you can do to make sure that you've made the most of the situation, in the sense that like Rabbi Twersky with the how a lobster grows.
Sure.
During times of stress, if you use it correctly, it can also be times of growth. So how do you use this time correctly?
Yeah, those are very important questions. And and maybe that's really a bigger discussion for a lot of our listeners too, and see if we can get some of them to chime in on this. We have seen that some people handle pressure and the ability to change completely different than others. Um, Even the most adverse to change people can come around when there really isn't a choice, right? Our company is going down unless we can figure out how to use the equipment that we have to make a different product, because right now nobody's buying our product. And we've got to become part of that uh, critical supply chain. We've got to be part of the supply chain of what people want and need right now. So if you're in some sort of food processing, or if you're into medical devices, or cut and sew that can change over from making one product to making, and I don't want to just use masks as the example, but there's all kinds of products that need to be cut and sewn, whether it's smocks and pants and booties and all kinds of things that the healthcare field is running low on. Getting that ability to change from making a product that had nothing to do with those into those really takes a tremendous amount of brain power, even if the products are simple, because you're retooling an entire plant. And you're having people do things that they weren't doing yesterday. And you're saying, listen, we need you to come to work today, but today's work is nothing like what you did the last time you were at work.
Well, I think that's kind of the key, is selling people, not telling them.
Yeah.
Giving them the why is a big deal.
Yeah, it really is. And I don't think there's too much information that you can give out. I think too little information is what really kills those types of projects and that type of innovation.
If you're on a manufacturing floor, it's a lonely life. You want to make sure that you keep them full of knowledge with regards to what's going on in the front of the ship or the wheelhouse. There's a couple things I'd like to add to that. I think that they're, beyond the surge capacity for demand products related to COVID, I think the long-term opportunity for people to diversify is really twofold. One is reshoring from China.
Sure.
There's going to be a significant amount of effort put on to bring the supply chain back to the U.S.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. With that comes wealth. I mean, manufacturing jobs have a higher percentage wage rate than most jobs, than most service sectors. And so I think the reshoring is going to be a big deal. People need to, start to build their rebound plan based on that. The other thing I see glaring in my face is Industry 4.0 smart technologies are going to be accelerated as far as their market acceptance goes, as a method to solve distancing and contamination and social distancing type of issues.
Yeah, absolutely. The more information that can be gathered without having a person standing very close to another person to gather that information, the better off we're going to be. So Industry 4.0 is definitely going to be a huge shift in a direction that's going to help us get there.
I think that the reshoring from China gives people significant purpose, and that really helps drive their motivation and their engagement with accountability. And then the other is that the Industry 4.0 is just cool. It's super interesting to do a technology roadmap and figure out what technologies you need in the future to become competitive, not just survive in a global environment, but really be competitive in it. So what I'm trying to do with my clients is give them not a distraction, but plant seeds of hope with regards to what's next. So
Right.
what's next is we need to ramp up anything that's offshore. We need to bring it back. Anything that we have as an opportunity to step into the smart manufacturing realm, we need to really look at those. And those conversations are interesting. And I think that they do provide a momentary lapse of, reality with regards to, say, the riots I think they'll subside and wane. And I hope that there's good legislative change that helps satisfy people's demands. And the COVID thing, it's going to be kind of a little bit of a roller coaster. So to provide this kind of direction that's filled with purpose and filled with intrigue, I think it's the best thing a leader could do besides empathetic listening.
No, I 100% agree with that, Dennis. And there's going to be a big push to onshore a lot of that business, so that's inevitable. Now the clients just have to decide where do they want to be on that curve. Do they want to be on the bleeding edge of bringing business back, or do they want to be on the second wave, or what's the right spot for them? But having those seeds of hope that business will come back because they're making those moves now is very important. And it's very important to let the workforce know that this is where we think we're heading, because the workforce needs hope as well.
Right. So just like any other time, they need direction. We need to look at our vision to make sure that it's really what we want now. Right. We've got to, like you and I, we're trying to reinvent the entire way that we do our show. Most of that is done on the manufacturing floor and in a boardroom. That's
right.
And so now we've got to innovate new ways to become competitive. And in smart manufacturing for us looks like this. It looks like us creating a more of a digital voice for people to engage in. And I'm hoping that with our YouTube page, people can start to post down below any kind of comments that they have related to the show. Of course, we want to try to keep it respectable. You can take shots at us if you want, but what we're really looking for is maybe information about how to handle this time of stress with your folks. So as an innovation leader, as a continuous improvement leader, as a trainer, a coach, a business owner, as a associate, what are some of the things that you guys can do to help manage the situation, that this ever evolving situation? So we have a couple minutes left here, Johnny. I didn't know if you wanted to give any final thoughts with regards to the topics from today.
Well, if we're going to do a quick little plus delta on this, I think that we are hitting a topic that's very timely. Maybe 6 months from now, if somebody looks at this video for the first time, hopefully it'll seem like a bad, distant dream, and it's not that as relevant anymore. But right now, I think this is a message that people need to hear, and maybe even need to continue on with the dialogue. And as you said, in a very respectful way. There's an awful lot of disrespect happening right now that I think we can try to stay above that fray and not get involved with. I'm happy to debate any kind of ideas with people. And I promise not to call anybody any names while I'm at it. And looking forward to hearing what our listeners have to say about these topics and what they might do the same, what they might do differently. And let's keep this dialogue going. Okay,
so your delta and your committed action from the lessons you learned.
My delta is when it's kind of silly. I'm going to not have ice cubes in my water glass. They jingle around too much, and
that's amazing.
Up everything.
All right, and then what actions are you going to take this week from the lessons you've learned?
I have a few different client visits lined up, all on the virtual side, And these discussions are going to continue on with them. These are leadership style folks that I'm talking with, and I want to make sure that these topics are relevant, that they're being discussed, and that there's takeaway for all of us from these discussions. You know, we're all learning from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I guess for me, my plus is that I have upped my game from a technology perspective. I definitely feel like I'm more prepared. And when we first started the podcast, I was kind of like flying in from somewhere, doing it on my phone or some 12-year-old laptop. And I have really enjoyed the new technology, not just for the podcast, but for the new challenges that we're facing with our training. So I'm kind of psyched with my new environment in that way. And I hope that it produces a better quality podcast.
Well, fantastic.
Yeah, my delta is that I should have definitely done it sooner. When I look back, I didn't take my own advice and invest enough up front before we started this, but I think we were experimenting, so I'll be okay. The committed action I have this week is to make sure that we begin to build our brand. You know, I think it's important that people learn more about who we are, why we think that we have a voice that should not only be heard, but I think should engage people in our primary vision, which is to learn what it takes to become a world-class lean enterprise and sustain it with conversations with industry, government, and education, right? So our next podcast, we're going to have a very important guest. I don't want to let it out of the bag who it is yet, but we have a very important industry guest coming on the show with us. And this person's reputation is amazing and will really help infuse the conversation about innovation. I think that's what our next podcast is going to be about, right?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. It's really going to bring us back several years in our development.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Not only does he have a stellar reputation in his field, but he is one funny son of a gun. So we may have a few more chuckles when we're together next as well.
All right. So our mystery guest will be with us next time. And so for now, I'm Uncle D, and with Johnny Hustle saying peace.
Peace out.